is the Rangers Journal Night.
Well, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Rangers Journal. My name is Ross Graham. I am your host for this evening. We have got a really good pod on tonight. We're going to be taking a look at some of the new players who have come in through the door this closed season. Also, some of the players that we're being linked with, and then some of those that we just haven't seen quite enough of to make a judgment. Clearly, it's too early in the season to write any player off, but I'm sure someone around this panel probably will. Speaking of the panel, let me go around and say hi to everyone. Kai, how are you, pal? Good to be on the pod again with you.
Yeah, like you said beforehand, it's been a while, mate. But yeah, good to be on. I'm not doing too bad. How's yourself?
I'm good. Yeah. Stag do at the weekend, so it's been a tough few days. It's been a journey, a personal journey that I didn't know if I'd see the back end of, but I'm here now, so it's all good. Feeling better. Dave, how are you, pal? Good to see you again, mate.
Cheers, mate. Yeah, I'm good. Looking forward to getting into these, to be honest.
Good stuff. And last but by means not least, we've got Doug. How are you, pal?
I'm good, thanks. Looking forward to the chat yourself.
Yeah, all good. Thank you. All good. Thanks to those that are watching at home. It would be good to get your thoughts on these players so far, whether or not you've been impressed, who's been a hit, who's been a maybe, and who's been a miss. And we'll share our thoughts as well as we bring up some of these slides. So credit to Kai for bringing these slides to the table today. Thanks very much for that, mate. So let's get straight into it. I guess our most recent signing, someone that looks to be a direct replacement for the stalwart that was Connor Goldson. And Kai, I guess it's fair to say he didn't really get off to the flying start that we perhaps hoped.
No, when I was putting these together, I was kind of torn between whether to put the OG in or not. But I feel like you have to. Again, I've not spoken about it on the pod since, but I don't feel like it's his fault. I think the flick from John Suter obviously does him a little bit dirty. And just to say as well, the stats for the first few players are just from league appearances. Like, I don't know what it is, but a lot of the kind of stat places I normally use don't have the earlier like Champions League rounds, and they never have the Scottish Cup or the League Cup. So now that was available. So this is just all from the league, and you can kind of see there. I think the only thing that's not reflective of what else I've seen from Proper is probably the long ball accuracy. I think his long passing actually is quite good. Obviously, it's just the game against Motherwell, he's had a bit of an off day and only managed to 20% there. But I think everything else is kind of what you see. I think he's solid, he's strong, he's good in the air, he's very comfortable on the ball, he's comfortable stepping in to like pick the ball up in what you'd consider like areas for a number six, which I really like. You can kind of see that in having over one interception there. He's comfortable stepping up there. I think that was something that was kind of pointed out before he came. So he doesn't quite have recovery pace, but he's good at stepping out. He's good at picking the ball up, and I think he's intelligent in that. And again, hopefully he's not out for too long, and we can see more of him very soon.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. It's I think when you're looking at the players that we brought in, you see someone of this caliber and sort of experience, especially the amount of games that he's played in European football is very really impressive and really encouraging. So definitely a big coup for us. Dave, Kai was talking there a bit about stepping out with the ball. Now that's not something that we always saw Goldson do. It seemed to be more of a Suter type thing to sort of take that ball into midfield and be comfortable with it. How do you see him and Suter kind of working out between them?
I think they just need to develop the understanding of each other, mate, so that they know when the other's going to go. I don't necessarily think you want to limit it to one of them. The fact that they've both got that quality is good. They're just going to have to be incredibly careful that, if one is doing that, the other needs to hold back so that they've got it covered. To be fair, I'd echo what you guys say. I think this is actually a cracking signing. He's done look good to me since he's come in, to be honest.
Yeah, I'd echo that. I think there's definitely a time to bring him up to speed and get used to his surroundings and stuff. Doug, what have your early observations of Proper been?
Yeah, I think he looks like he's got good potential. I'd had a look at him obviously once he came on the radar, and I think he's been a solid player for the majority of his career. He's played at a good level. as I say, I think the stepping out thing I really like, and I like that both centre backs can do that. It adds a little bit more variation, and variation can cause uncertainty in your opponent, which is a plus. And I'm not sure what type of. I think you often get two types of defender in terms of the way they come out as well. Some will kind of just come out a little bit more gently and look for the pass, whereas Suter, for example, can be very aggressive when he comes out and really drive. Which is one of the things I like about him. So if Proper's perhaps the other type, then again that gives a little bit more variation. And the big thing for us that I think that's a big bonus is that if we rely on having the centre backs pushing up instead of having that sort of more defensive midfielder dropping back, it pulls the whole team forward and makes you just naturally more aggressive and more on the front foot, which is something I want to see because it was something that happened far too often. Especially with Lundstrom, and it can have its benefits. It was very good in Europe, but we saw it too often in domestic games that Lundstrom would be in the middle of the two centre backs, and we don't need to be that far back in domestic games. So having both of them as forward movers, I think, is a plus.
Yeah, definitely. And Doug, just sticking with you, do you think he needs a different type of player next to him than Suter, or do you think they can form a partnership quite well?
Yeah, no, I think I don't see why they can't. From what I've gathered, Proper is similar to Goldson in that he's a talker. So I think that's a bonus if you've got someone who's there, who will help to organise the defence, and especially when as well if we've also got a younger player on one side and potentially JFD or if it's Ridvan or Fraser. Having an organiser there is a big plus. So I think they can work together well in that respect. That's also potentially a bonus if you've got Enciala coming in as a young player who'll need talking through games when he first comes through. So I think those are all benefits. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I expect any player at this level of football that we play and aspire to play at to be able to play with one another to a reasonable degree. So yeah, I wouldn't accept that as an excuse, to be honest.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. Dave, I've gotten to 7 minutes in without saying Tavernier yet, so I'm going to mention Tavernier. How and please keep the comments nice and PC in there first.
The bigger thing is that I haven't mentioned them.
7 minutes. That must be a new record. Thanks to those that are watching at home. For those that are just joining now, we're going through all of the summer signings so far, giving them our early thoughts on them, and then we'll look at a few rumours that are in the pipeline potentially as well. Dave, I did just want to quickly touch on you. I'll move on to the next guy very quickly, but I wanted to understand your thoughts on, I guess, through Clement's eyes. Do you think he's brought this guy in to provide real stability next to Tav and let Tav do a bit more of the forward running?
So I mean, for starters, what we've seen so far, I think he's playing on the left, isn't he, as opposed to the right. I think, yeah, there's an element of stability because he's an experienced head, so he does bring that to the team. And I think, really, if it wasn't him, you're talking about either Davies or Enciala. Now, Davies, we've discussed him plenty of times. Enciala is still very, very young. So I think Proper is the man to give you that experience. I also got a feel from him, to be honest, that we've talked about the way that he steps out, that it brings the team forward a bit. I saw a comment about his passing, getting us out of defence quicker. And I think they're probably very specific attributes that Clement's gone out and looked for. That kind of fits with his style of play, his desire to play it forward quicker. And Proper can either step out, pick a pass forward, and he's got a nice range of passing, or, as Kai alluded to, I mean, I know it says 20% here, but I actually thought his long balls were quite good as well. So I think Clement's looked at this guy and thought, right, these are some specific attributes that are actually going to fit how I want to play, as opposed to kind of what's gone before, which is almost, I could just get a defender and see how he gets on. So yeah, I think there's a very firm reason for bringing this guy in. I don't think it is just it's another defender we need. I think they've picked him for a reason.
Yeah. Fair enough. Fair enough. Kai, we've got loads of these to get through again. Thank you very much for pulling these together. So I'm going to move on to the next player that we've got. So very interesting player here, and we've had a bit of a chat on our WhatsApp group about, I guess, what his kind of role is within the team now. Kai, first of all, what are your kind of early observations and thoughts on Byron?
I think I watched quite a lot of them last year. Like if you follow the account on Twitter, you kind of see, and everybody always kind of associates Barron with John Walker. Like I talked to John a lot. We talked about Connor Barron a lot, and I think we're pretty close in the Connor Barron tweets from last season. So if you look back at that, you'll see from like November last year, I was kind of wanting Rangers to go for him. It's that energy and hunger, the desire to win the ball that he brings. I think, like you said, the discussion we had was whether he's a 6 or an 8. Like personally, I prefer him being an 8 because I want the number 6 to be someone that doesn't necessarily drive with the ball, the player that's there to break up the play the simple passes, protect the defence. I don't think Barron is that. He's got the energy and the defensive ability to do that, but I think he'd be wasted just sitting in the middle. I think he does a good job. We've obviously seen a lot with Ryan Jack when Tab bomb forward, Ryan Jack would kind of pull wide. So we weren't like bare on the right hand side. I've noticed Barron do that quite a few times, kind of fill in that gap, and that's exactly what you need in your fullbacks going forward. But it's just the difference in the energy, like I say, compared to having someone like Lundstrom. Like I don't want to just kind of down talk John Lundstrom for what he done last season, but just the difference of having someone in there that's going to crash into every tackle, they're going to go to win every ball and just have that bit of pace and ability to lift your head up. Like he does drop back quite deep. I have noticed that he's willing to take the ball off the centre backs, but he does try those kind of punchy passes through the lines to get us forward. And he moves forward as well. He doesn't sit back. He doesn't cover the centre halves. He gets the ball forward and moves forward himself. I kind of expected what we've seen so far. Maybe not to the level that he's shown to for most people to look at him as one of the first names in the team sheet. Like I knew what he was going to bring. I just didn't think he'd step up this quickly, and I've been so encouraged by what I've seen so far for Connor Barron.
And some of the early stuff that we heard coming out of Ockenhowie was that Connor Barron was the fittest guy on the training pitch, the most willing runner, had oodles of energy. And you mentioned there, Kai, that you knew he had it in him. Do you think it's more circumstantial that he's being played in the sense that he's kind of having to do that 6 role, maybe more than you'd like to see him do, or do you think actually he's just really impressed and therefore he's been given the chance and seems to have seized it?
I think given what we've seen in pre-season, that he was always going to be given the chance come the start of the competitive games, but I think he's played so well that there's no way you can drop him. And with the way that he plays, you're not going to play Diomande as a 6. Obviously, a lot of people have spoken about wanting to see him further forward. You're never going to play him as your 6. So with kind of what they bring to the side and their ability to get on the ball and get it forward, I think Barron just naturally becomes a 6 next to Diomande, and Diomande becomes 8. I think it's really quite a natural thing that's happened with the two of them playing, and if you still call it a double pivot, the two of them playing there, they just naturally became a 6 and an 8 on their own. But I'd still, like I mentioned, like to see Diomande move further forward, shift Barron to play more as a number 8 and get him driving at defences with the ball, because he's able to play those defence splitting passes and create chances for us, and have the number 6 as someone that just protects the defence, keeps it simple, and wins the ball back essentially.
Yeah, I think that's really fair. And some of the comments and chat that's coming in is saying that Barron could play a 6, 8 or a 10. Could be interesting to see how his kind of future unfolds at Ibrox and whether or not he'll be given a chance, slightly further up the pitch. Dave, we noticed we all will have seen Lewis Ferguson's progression, and there's been a lot of chat about Connor Barron being of a similar ilk and a similar caliber when he left, his prior club. How big a coup do you think this guy is? Do you think we're underplaying how big it actually is that we've managed to secure this guy down?
Yeah, I think he could be. He hasn't. He's off to a great start. Obviously, hasn't achieved anything yet, but I think from what I've seen so far, I'd say the potential is there. That you would say is a great coup. I think the difference for me is the Scottish link. The fact that he ticks so many boxes when it comes to European football. I think you could almost say he's a bit like Sterling in the sense that he's just got Udall's energy. You get the feeling that he'd play wherever he was asked to play. I don't know if he'd be as good as Sterling is, but he's incredibly willing, and you can see that. And we've seen some very nice interplay between him and Diamande as well. So I think the potential's there. He's just got to kind of keep going on his current trajectory. He's got to keep improving. I don't think he's quite the finished article yet. There is wee bits that he can tweak on. And if he does that, then yeah, I think he could be.
Yeah. And Doug, clearly there were a number of teams that were in for him, as I mentioned before. We heard rumours of Italy, maybe some down in England. Surely this guy is exactly what we want for a player trading model, because they won't just sort of close off their focus on Barron. They'll probably track his career and maybe see us as that next step. What has been your kind of early observations of the lad?
Yeah, just before I say that, just want to give a quick shout out in the chat to Ewan Minton, who's become a YouTube member. Thank you very much for doing so, Ewan. Yeah, I think he's a really exciting player. Everything Kai and as I said there about his abilities, specific attributes in terms of the passing, the opportunity to become an 8. So he's been that 6 for us at the moment. I think he's been excellent in terms of the swapping around with Tav in particular, but I've seen him doing it on the left side as well. He's been really willing. He's got loads of energy. He's that player that I think has provided that shining light the fans have really needed right around this time, because he's got all those things that fans love. He's the energy and a bit of the passion, and he just comes across as that. And I think, for me, the bonus, obviously it's early days, but the bonus for me is that I think I can see him being nothing but a win-win, because he either is going to stay with us for 5, 6, 7 years, and I think he'll become the kind of Jack-like figure where fans, say will really take to him. A lot of people are already saying that they want him as a future captain. So that kind of shows the kind of regard he's already getting held in. And I could see him. I could easily see him potentially on that trajectory. Again, caveating that with early days. That's my best Bennett impression there. But equally, he could be here for 2 years and we sell him for 20 million. So, I really think that for us, like you said, in terms of the transfer model, it could be a win-win that way, but equally it could be a win-win in that he's an exciting Scottish prospect that stays with us for a while.
And Doug, am I being harsh here when I say that I think he's the player that we all wanted Raskin to be?
Yeah. I think that kind of area, midfield, the kind of 8 and 6 position, people love tenacious players in that area of the pitch, centre mid, and so we did see a little bit of that from Raskin, and that was when he had his popular little spot as well. It's that kind of Gattuso-esque position that folk just love, that kind of player. And as I say, the energy and the graft and the sometimes you don't even need to be the greatest of players. If you've got that energy and passion there, the fans will love you. And as I say, there is that side to the fan base as well, where you don't always have to be the greatest player if you've got those things. And as I say, I think with Conor Barron, we're lucky in that we have that, but he's also got the skills as well.
Yeah, fair assessment then. Right, moving on to another interesting topic of discussion. So clearly Mohamed Diamande joined us last season with an obligation to buy. I believe that's now been triggered through. So he's a Rangers player. He'll be with us for, I'm not quite sure how long the contract is, but he's definitely one of the players that people are hanging a lot of hopes on as being the next big prospect at Ibrox. Kai, I've laid my cards on the table with this guy. And I don't want to go around this thing again, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on I guess, firstly, what you've seen so far, and then secondly, what you think the actual potential of this lad is. What do you think that kind of the ceiling of this guy could be?
I'm going to start by saying I get where you're coming from. We obviously have had a bit of back and forth in the chat at times, and I do get where you're coming from. There is times you look at him, you can think he's being lazy or he's throwing a tantrum, but when you look at it from the other sense, it must be really frustrating to know where players should be and where you want them to be and them to never be there. I think that's why quite a lot of the time we see him kind of throwing his hands up or he's pointing in areas and then he ends up passing the ball back. I just don't think it's been a bit better recently. Some of the players we've brought in are maybe a bit more in that level, but players aren't intelligent enough to know where they should be or find those pockets of space because he's good enough. He's good enough for those passes. I said it with Barron as well. He's really good at firing the ball through the lines and getting players turned, but players just aren't where they need to be. And I get that must be frustrating. I don't know how high the ceiling is. I definitely think Diamandi's the type of player, if he continues developing the way he is, I'd love to see him further forward like he was at the weekend. I think he's good at creating chances. He's good at striking the ball with both feet. He's really good at holding the ball and knowing when to pass it. I think the times he loses the ball and doesn't pass it at the right time is a bit of frustration. Again, like I said, players not being where they want to be, but he needs to learn to develop that bit of his game. That is something that is it is his fault that he holds on to it for too long. You can be frustrated that players aren't where you want them to be, but you still need to know when to release the ball in those moments where he loses it, which is, I know when you get frustrated at him and when the comments kind of, the negativity comes around him, that is something that he needs to work on. I won't deny that. You can be frustrated all you want, but you're still losing the ball essentially. That's something he needs to work on moving forward. But I do think in a couple of years, he's the type of player with potential that we can sell for 15 to 20 million. He's obviously came through the Right to Dream Academy to Norgerland and now to us, and some of the players that have kind of made that pathway. You look at someone like Mohamed Kudus that came from Right to Dream that ended up at Ajax and went to West Ham for like 40 million. I'm not saying we're going to get that, but I think the ceiling is really high. I'd like to see him, like I said, further forward so we could kind of get a consistent look at him as being the main creator. Because he obviously scored the 2 goals in two, I'm sure it was 2 goals in 2 weeks. He scored last season, one with either foot from outside the box away to St Johnson, then at Ibrox against Hearts. So we've seen that he can do that, but I don't think he got a league goal after that. Someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think he scored another league goal after that one. So we need to see him being that kind of creative force and goal scoring threat more consistently. So I'd like to see either play Sterling at the six, let Barron be the eight, bring a six in and let Diamandi play further forward so we can see what he really offers in that position because that's where I think we can probably get the best out of him.
Yeah, and I think most fans will echo that. There's no doubt that there is bucket loads of talent in this lad, and I think Gary just hit the nail on the head there. I'll bring that comment back up. He has the talent and touch, but he just hasn't taken charge of games yet. And I think that's a really fair comment. We see him demand the ball, as you said, Kai, and sometimes get frustrated that players aren't on his wavelength, perhaps, or on that level. But Dave, I'll come to you. Do you not think that kind of growing up as a player is actually looking to try and spot the runs of players and sort of play the way that play to their qualities rather than just kind of trying to marshal them round around you? Isn't that what being a creative player is about? Watching the runs, picking out the passes.
So yeah, I think there's definitely an argument for that, Ross. The one thing I would say, again, let's talk caveats for a second. I get the feeling that Clement has quite a structured way that he wants to play. So totally take what you're saying about, he should be creative enough to kind of see what the players are going to do. But if they've trained all week in a certain system, a certain structure, then he is naturally going to expect, right, well, we trained this all week. I expect you to be over there, and actually you're not. I think one of the things I would point out with him, and it's quite easy to forget, he is still only 22. Now, if we were talking one of our youths, we'd barely play them in the first team by the time he's 22. This guy's already played first team football, Scandinavia. He's now come here. He's played quite a lot. I think he's still got a lot of room to grow. And I think that, for me, more than anything, affects his potential ceiling. It's the fact that there's still a lot of space to develop in there. I think, yes, he probably does need to look at that creative element and kind of focusing on where people are maybe going to be rather than where he expects them to be. But as I said, I do think we need to factor in that, Clement plays quite a structured way, and there would be an expectation that people would be where he's looking for them to be.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And do you see him as being obviously he was brought in as part of the player trading model? How long do you think it's going to take him to get to the level where we actually think, okay, shop window time, let's see what we can get for this lad?
It's a golden question, isn't it? Something as a club we've been pretty terrible at, if we're being honest, is selling players at the right time. I think a lot of it depends on circumstances, what's happening around you. We have a rubbish season. He continues not to take charge of games, has good flashes, but other games drifts through them. We don't win cups, then, his value's not going to be high. You say, play the Europa League, get a half decent run in that, it might actually be that the end of the season is the right time to sell him. I don't think that's dictated so much by him as the circumstances around him. Obviously, he has an impact, but I think a lot of it is about the visibility that he's getting, his ability to platform what he can do on the bigger stages where he's going to be noticed.
Yeah, fair comment. I think that's really worth calling out. So European football definitely would provide that platform, as you say. Doug, I'd like to ask you a couple of questions. The first one is, what skills do you think he brings to the team now? And then I guess where do you see the key areas of improvement for Mohamed Diamanda?
Well, I think he's good on the ball, and obviously, as Kai touched on, his passing ability is strong in terms of being able to find players and cut through defences. So I think those are his key attributes at the moment. The main thing I want to see him develop is kind of what we've touched on in terms of just being in the game more, and taking a bit more of the game and a scruff of the neck. He reminds me a little bit of Aribo, and that sometimes I watch games and I kind of forget he's there for periods of time, because I don't see him on the ball, or the game kind of passes him by when we're playing. Obviously, we play a lot of our game on the wings with our fullbacks and things. So occasionally I forget he's there. And I used to do that with Rebo sometimes as well, because I feel like Rebo was obviously a very skillful player and could also do a lot of really good things on the ball. But I had the same feeling about him, is that he never quite grabbed games and made himself the main thrust of the team.
Mm-hmm.
And I think
Mm-hmm.
he has continued to have that problem moving down south as well, which is why I don't think he ever really cemented himself. So I would want to see him avoid that fate, and try and just, as I say, make himself a bit more of a feature of the game. For lack of a better phrase, make himself the man, and the player that the game revolves around. Which, if we do move him slightly forward and have him in that sort of more advanced 10 position, I think that's what you would want from him. The ball to be moving around him, and him to sort of dictate a lot of play. So that would be the kind of the main things I'd want to see him develop. I think in terms of his age, 22, if he does that over the next 2 years, and adds that to the game, I think you would see a player who will be attracting a lot of attention. Obviously, particularly if he does it in the European games. And for me, that's the kind of, in terms of what you touched on before, in terms of the window of opportunity. I think kind of 3 years is a kind of a key point, on the assumption we're giving players sort of 3-year contracts initially. You're probably looking to extend that come year 2 if they've been playing well, because if they're playing well, then you're either going to want to keep them for longer, or that'll be when you're starting to think, right, if we're going to sell them, that time's going to come up. So you put the extension in there to protect the value, and so that 3-year/4-year period then becomes the key window of time, because that for me is when they either get sold, or we're deciding we're going to keep them, or indeed we're deciding we're going to let them go. So for me, that's the kind of the key time frame. So that's what I would like to see. As I say, he's got plenty of time to do it, and and hopefully, like you say, if we can, I think it applies to quite a few players actually in our team. Strangely enough, is settling them in a position to allow them to go on and make that their own. Because we've got quite a few players actually that I think that falls into, like sort of Jeffrey's fallen into it. Sterling's obviously our big utility guy, and that's the kind of problem with utility players, is particularly when they're young. If you don't get any time to specialise in a position, then you never specialise in a position. So that's something I'd like to see, not just for Diamandi, but for a couple of other guys as well. Just get them settled in a position and let them really grasp it and make it their own.
Yeah, fair enough. The message to you, Mohammed, is very, very clear. Get involved with the games, get forward, score some goals, and you'll be a firm fan's favourite. Right, moving on to the next player. We have Vaclav Cherny, another interesting player, a loan deal this season from Wolfsburg, a player who's played at international level, was at the Euros this season, and has played in Europe for many, many years with a very good pedigree, and still only 26. Kai, talk to me about Cherny. What do you think this guy brings to the current Rangers team?
This is one of those transfers that came out of nowhere. We've obviously had a lot of rumours, whereas this one seemed to start, and as soon as it got legs, it was kind of over the line and finalised. Just think what he adds is a balance we've not had really on the right hand side. I know we sometimes used to play a Rebo there, but Joe Rebo's not a right winger essentially, whereas Cherny is a genuine winger with good pace and ability on the ball. He's so positive. Like I noticed that at the weekend there. Like every time he gets the ball, he's trying to get on his left foot. Like it's really obvious what he's going to do. It's a really obvious comparison to look at him and think about Robin, because who's the last kind of right winger or the right winger you think about, like left-footed right winger you think about at that level? It's probably Robin. Also, get the haircut to match as well. But I just think he's been really positive since he came in. Like I say, he looks to get it on his left foot. He's good enough to create for others. He's obviously only played like 87 minutes, I think, in the league, so he still managed to create 2 chances in that time and get a goal. So that kind of shows the impact he has. He obviously got the assist away to Kiev, which didn't matter in the end, but it just shows the quality he has, the ability to just shift the ball onto his left foot and whip it into the box. And it's not just a random cross to nowhere to put it into a dangerous area, and Desser's managed to get the goal. Just like you say, really good pedigree, Czech international, Bundesliga experience, also plenty of experience in Eredivisie as well, which I always say I think the league is a higher standard to ours, even though it doesn't always really translate. Look, players coming from there, or you look at Lammers not being able to do it here and go over there. I think generally the standard of football is better. It's different in terms of style, but comparatively team-wise, I think the standard is probably a lot better actually than what it is here. And we kind of seen that when we played against PSV. So if you can do it there, he showed us what he can do in Europe. I'm really excited to see what he can do for the rest of the season, even though it's only a loan deal.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. He brings a calmness, but also a directness that we probably have missed in previous years gone by. Sticking with the hairstyles, then Dave, over to you, pal. Sorry, bud. Couldn't resist.
Nah,
a bit of a low blow, low hanging fruit. Look, talk to me about Cherny. We've seen bits and bobs from so far. I think he was maybe a little bit rusty. Maybe the first sort of few moments that he came on. I think he had a cameo in the first match, and then obviously proved to start away in Poland against Kiev. What have you made of the fella so far?
I like what I've seen, to be honest. Like most swingers, there's periods where he goes a bit quieter, comes back into the game. But I think what's really telling is the moments of quality that Kai spoke about. And when we see that, it's genuine quality. And let's be honest, it's a hell of a lot. Jesus, Curry, thanks. It's been a long time since we've had someone on the right wing that you can say is genuine quality, as opposed to the old kind of square pegs and round holes. This is another one that I think should be a really good signing for us, at least on paper, once he gets up to speed. I think it's worth noting, despite the fact we have seen a few moments of quality, he isn't up to speed yet. I mean, he's managed one full 90 now, but he's not fully match fit at this point. He's still got a bit to go. And to be honest, if we see an improvement on what we have so far, then yeah, I think it's only positive for the season ahead.
Yeah. Doug, goals from wide areas has probably been a bit of a challenge for us. You look back, yes, kind of Aribo was on the wing. We had Kent on one side, but they weren't prolific. We tend to try and be quite down the middle with our goals. But it seems like this guy's been brought in with a bit more of a direct mindset to sort of pepper the keeper or at least get balls into the box. What have you made of him?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a big bugbear, I think, for a lot of people, and a big miss from the team. And we know we don't get enough goals from anywhere but forward and right back, just full stop. And really, your wingers are the positions that you should be looking to get a good number of goals from. We saw Sima come in last season on loan. Obviously, he did really well. I think it was about 18 he ended up with by the end of the season in all competitions. And that's the highest we've had from that kind of area in a long time. And I think he's similar to Sima in that I feel like we've brought in a lot of players who are like a little bit inconsistent. We do tend to sign wingers that are quite good at the kind of the driving part, but a lot of them kind of just lack that last bit of quality. So Matondo's a perfect example. You get him on the ball and driving, he's brilliant at that, but he just lacks that bit of quality you need when it comes to doing something with the ball at the end. For the fact that one amazing goal, he's not got enough just nice average goals. And as I say, that was what Sima brought, and I'm hoping that that's what we're going to see from Cherney as well. Is that we'll get a bit more regularity because he has that little bit extra quality. His movement looks to be really good. I did a breakdown on Twitter a couple of days ago or last week about one move in particular where he kind of rotates really well with he who shall not be named at right back. In terms of like directing themselves around, finding the space, moving the players about them to create spaces to receive the ball and create chances. So if that's a partnership that's going to continue, I think that could be quite fruitful because Tavernier is very good at finding space ahead of him. That's always been one of his main traits. That was how he used to, like back when he had his full pace and everything, that would be how he would find himself in the perfect spot in the back post all the time because he was good at doing that. So if he can build up a good combo with Cherney, then I think we could see a lot of good things. Obviously, they combined together for his goal quite well at Motherwell. So yeah, I'm optimistic that, as I say, he's got that little bit of extra quality that I think some of our other signings in that position have lacked.
Yeah, really, really fair assessment. Dave, we mentioned Tavernier there, and clearly, whenever we look at that right wing position, we know that there does need to be an element of support for Tavernier. For all of the qualities that he brings to the table, there is a slight frailty in his defence, in his defensive attributes, and more so because he tends to move forward quite a bit and be progressive with the ball forward. Do you think Cherney will provide that, or do you think he's been brought in more as an attacking option rather than a supportive option?
I think he will. If I'm being honest, again, it's back to the whole scouting side of things, and I don't really see that they would have bought him in if they didn't think he was capable of it. I think when we saw the cup game at the weekend, he did try quite a bit where he needed to kind of support Tav in the defensive side. Again, as Gary alluded to, probably neither of them is fully fit right now, or I don't know about Tav, but certainly Cherney isn't match fit. Tav, I don't know. So I think that is probably more a time thing. I think give them a bit of time working together, you'll see that kind of overlap between the two of them working a bit better. Right now, it's in its infancy, isn't it?
Of course. Right. We best move on. Plenty more to get through. So, a very exciting prospect. Kai, you're going to be best placed to have done your research on this fella, I'm sure. Hamza Igaman, the young Moroccan lad who I had never heard of prior to this. I'm sure I'm not alone in saying that. But what can we expect from this lad when he comes through, Kai?
I think if you watch the footage is very impressive. He holds up the ball well, uses his body well, very Morelos-like in the way he likes to bring the ball in and turn defenders. Like, you can see the strengths there are listed as anchor playing ball control, which might be a couple of things that our fans would say that Cyril Dessers struggles with the most. I've actually thought recently his hold up playing stuff's been pretty good. I think it was a bit harsh, the Kiev game, the kind of criticism he was getting. I thought his hold up play was fine then. But that's where Egeman kind of comes into his own. He's good at rolling defenders. I'd probably say he's quicker than Morelos was, and he certainly looks a lot more polished when it comes to finishing. Like I say, it doesn't matter what he's done in Morocco anymore. We've obviously bought him based off of that, and what I have seen is impressive. He's a good finisher, takes shots early, which was one of the things I was most impressed with. Obviously, that's another criticism that Dessers gets, so he offers something a bit different there, and that he'll take those snapshots. He'll just try and get the ball out his feet and have a go. Kind of an impressive array of goals as well, inside the box, outside the box. Pretty strong in there. I'm really excited to finally see him eventually, but like I say, it now doesn't matter what he's done in Morocco. It's all about what he does when he steps on the pitch in a Rangers shirt, and I'm really, really hoping it's not too long until we finally get to see him.
And Kai, what's your take on how long it's been since the guy came through the door? I think it's about 45 days now since he's been he's been since he's signed. What are your thoughts on how long it's taken him to get up to speed?
I think it was obviously worrying at the start, like he did end the season with an injury, but I don't know why the communication was so bad around that. It's the type of thing that, like, the worry that fans had about the rumours of the 4-month injury. He was never in any training pictures. All we kept hearing was he's training alone, he's not up to speed. I feel like the club could have been a lot more transparent around that, just to kind of avoid that. Because there was a bit of hysteria, because we've spent what's rumoured to be about like 1.5 to 2 million on this guy. And we don't have a lot of money to spend, so it's a big outlay for what we've spent already this summer. So I think the communication could have been better around that. I do think it's been a bit weird that he's not even been on the bench for B team games yet. I know the manager mentioned around October, November, we're going to have a lot of games. So that might be the first time we see him. I think, again, if the communication was a bit better and we were told that from the offset, if the injury was worse than they thought it would be. But I think the whole he's never trained at this level before didn't really wash with me. Like, he's played with under 23s at Morocco, and there's some very talented players there that are playing at the top level. Like, just because he's came from a level that's not maybe as good as Scottish football, you can't say that he's just not ready for it when none of us have seen that evidence. So I do think it's been a bit worrying the time it's taken, but I'm still going to be positive from what I've seen in the footage and what I've read from kind of Moroccan experts and people that have seen more of him in the flesh. I'm still excited to see what it can do. Like I say, hopefully it's sooner rather than later.
Yeah, completely agree. Really excited to see this lad, young, powerful, probably very hungry for to prove himself over here. There's a question that Gary's put in, but Doug, I'm gonna bring it up for you. It is addressed to Kai. It says, I'll change it to Doug. Once they're all playing, do you think we have the right mix of different styles between Igaman, Dessers, and Danilo, who all have completely different strengths?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a positive to have, variation in your players. Obviously, you're going to come up against different types of defences across the season, and then particularly obviously differences between domestic and European competition. So having variation there and available is a big plus. I don't know if they're necessarily completely different. They do have some overlapping traits. Their strengths, I think, certainly lie in different areas in terms of sort of their key strengths. But I can see them all playing in that forward position that we have in the system that we've got. Some of them, like I think Man could probably play slightly a couple of other of the forward positions as well potentially. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a positive to have that variation so that you can avoid the sort of the classic plan B is do plan A better, which I don't think ever really works unless you're maybe like Man City and you can bring on players who are just as good, if not better, than who you started with. Then maybe you can get away with that. But yeah, you need to have that variation so that you can, as I say, switch it up both from game to game, but also mid game as well. I mean, you saw, Danilo had I thought a pretty decent game against Johnson. He got a couple of chances that maybe if he was match sharp might have taken, but then Dessers comes on and scores within 4 minutes, I think. So bringing a new player in can totally change the game for you, and so I think having those options are big pluses.
Couldn't agree more. Dessers clinical, absolutely clinical. Why are you laughing, Dave? I just want to quickly get your take on Igaman, and are you looking forward to seeing this guy?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing him. I tend to agree with Kai, to be honest. I think the communication around him is probably the biggest issue here. I guess the other kind of thing that most people will point to is, we're spending $1.5 million, $2 million on a guy that isn't ready to play, and yet, the first team really until the weekend we have Dessers as our only available striker. So, take aside any discussion of Dessers, you get an injury, you're in a lot of trouble very quickly. So I can see why fans are frustrated that the guys come in a couple of months or month and a half, I suppose, not seen him at all. But saying that, if he comes in that November spell of games that Guy mentioned, gets a few goals, makes a difference, then that opinion changes really quickly. So, yeah, I think for me, I just want to see him now. I just want to see what he's all about, what he brings to the table. I've heard the stories, heard the write-ups and the feedback. I think we all just want to see him on the pitch now.
Yeah, I'd agree. It's like knowing what you're getting for Christmas, isn't it? And
yeah,
the package is stuck in the post. Oh, sorry, it's stuck on Santa's sleigh, shall I say, for any kids watching. Right, moving on to the next player here. Look, I'm actually, in the sake of time, I'm going to give a quick overview of Liam Kelly. I think we'd all agree a very solid understudy, showed promise in preseason games, and definitely someone that we'll be able to trust when he comes in to play, if that's in the cup, if that's in the League Cup, whatever it would be. But just for the sake of time, I'm going to move on to the next player, because I'm sure this one will stimulate some debate and conversation. Kai, Jeff Day, it's been a bit of a saga getting this guy in through the door, hasn't it, from Cyprus? We heard about him going AWOL, and then he went back to his loaned club, and eventually we got the deal done with Fluminense to get it in through the door this season. Talk me through your observations of Jeff Day, where he's played, where you've been impressed with him, all of the above.
I'm just really glad we went back in for him. Like, I spoke to, we obviously had the guys from This Is Map on the channel, had them on a couple of times, and they said exactly what we've seen so far. They spoke about the defensive frailties, the loss of concentration, the sometimes getting beaten easily when a player's got a bit of trickery. We've seen all of that in pre-season, but I don't think we've seen as much how good he is going forward. Like, I put out a tweet talking about how good the 44% cross accuracy is that we see there, and the amount of chances that he's going to create per game. My favourite thing about the weekend, it's just the positivity, and as soon as he gets on the ball, he wants to get it forward, whether that's a pass, whether it's putting it in the box, whether it's driving forward himself. He's good enough to go and beat a man. He's good enough to take it inside. He can just knock it past him and run. He's absolutely rapid. He's 6 foot. He's strong. Unfortunately, his jumping ability is what got him sent off against Kiev, but you can see he's an aerial threat as well. It's like he's really good attacking the back post, which we've not had. We've a bit with Sima, but Sima kind of hung about more centrally instead of actually attacking the back post. The way we see Celtic have with Maeda, and that's why he gets so many goals. I think if we do use Hefty as a left winger, he's going to get those goals at the back post, whether it's headers or sliding in or anything like that. But the big thing about the weekend was or for me anyway, was the variety in his crosses. So he did create a few chances, but my favourite one was the cut back to Danilo. So he drives into the box and he can easily just flash it across goal, but he looks up, takes an extra touch, and then he finds Danilo, and Danilo should probably do better. But he's obviously not up to match sharpness yet, but that was something I really liked. It was the positivity to get into the position, the good link up play, and then to lift his head up and then realise now's not the perfect time to cross it, take that extra touch, and then kind of drag the ball back, which we've not really had. I've been really encouraged by what I've seen so far. The big test, if he's playing left back, is obviously going to be the first Old Firm game, and then heading into Europe, depending on what happens with Ridvan. But ignoring anything defensively, I've been so impressed with his ability going forward and his positivity, and like I say, ability to create chances and crossing the ball. I'm really encouraged so far, and I do think it's easy to forget that he's only 20. That there's so much room to grow, and if we can keep him for a few years, I think he could be a very, very key player for us.
Yeah, great assessment. I think we've all been impressed with, and he's probably, they've gone into that left wing position out of necessity more than anything. But have you been impressed with the guy so far?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, as Kai alluded to, he had a bit of a torrid time in that pre-season game against Man United. I think, as has been called out in the chat, there was a lot of kind of early shrieks about it, and he was useless, etc. I think the question marks remain defensively. Really, I don't think he's had huge sustained pressure since that game when he was facing off against Diallo. So, how he performs in a defensive sense, time will tell. But in an attacking sense, what a revelation. His crosses, good. He's getting into the box. He's carrying the ball well, and I think it's interesting. He seems to form really good partnerships, quite easily, I would say, with the left back when he is playing further forward. So we saw it with Ridvan, and they very quickly kind of started an understanding. But I thought he looked equally good when Fraser came on, and I think he was at left back then, and Fraser had come on further forward. But again, I thought they worked quite well together. So he does seem to be able to adapt to those around him, which is obviously a very useful trait. I think for me, the biggest question with this guy is longer term, is he a left back or is he a left winger?
Yeah. Yeah, really, really, really good observations with that one with Fraser as well. Doug, we've seen him at left wing, we've seen him at left back. And Dave rightly said there, he probably needs to find his position and hunker down in there. Could you see him playing on the right wing? Dare I say Gareth Bale-esque? Oh, that didn't land well, did it? we've just lost Doug there. So I take it Gareth Bale's not his favourite player. Kai, I'll come to you on that question. Would you like to see him maybe on that right, cutting in onto the sort of, we've seen how good his left foot could be, those sort of enticing balls into the box towards the back post?
I think it's a really interesting proposition. Obviously, the exact kind of way that Bale went, he will keep at Spurs as a left back from Southampton, and for whatever reason, around the team at the time decided he was going to be better at right wing. And look at the career he had. You can say what you want at the end of his career in the whole golf, Wales, Madrid, in that order scenario, but there's so many times those Gareth Bale goal compilations pop up, and I find myself sitting watching them, and I think people are going to look back in 5 or 10 years and realise how good he actually was, because he was ridiculous. The 40-yarders, the overhead kicks, the ability in the air, like a ridiculous player. And I do think he shows those signs, Hefty, of the defensive ability could get better. Don't get me wrong, you could keep him at left back and he could be a brilliant attacking left back, kind of similar to what you get from Marcelo, but you could just ignore the defensive issues moving further forward and just focus on what he's already good at. He's got a brilliant left foot. He's already had a few shots from range. I think goals will come, assists will come. I mean, I would, if it wasn't for Czerny coming in, I probably would have been more likely to want to see him at right wing. But again, there's that part of me that's like, what if he could be Gareth Bale? What if we could have our own Gareth Bale?
Our very own Brazilian Gareth Bale. That would be nice, wouldn't it? Thanks for those tuning in at home. We are currently running through the Rangers players that have come in this close season and assessing their progress so far. We're going to move on to the next player now. And Dave, I'm going to come to you. We haven't seen huge amounts of Clinton Enciala so far. Whether or not that was the plan or not, I'm not quite sure. But of what you have seen, what have your observations been?
I think the first thing that jumped out for me about him is he can pick a pass. He he had quite a few nice passes out of defence, and they weren't. I'm not talking about knocking it between the two centre backs. I'm talking about playing forward. And again, back to what I said before about proper, I think that's probably something that's been specifically looked for when they've gone out looking for a project defender, if you will. I think longer term, I don't know that we'll see massism this season unless it's enforced. This one does definitely feel like a bit of a growth project for me, but as I said, his passing jumped out. I think he's got quite a nice build on him. He's not going to be bullied, which is obviously important when it comes to Scottish football. I think not huge. You see there, he's 6 foot, but at the same time, I think he's got a decent enough build. I think I've seen the few obvious comparisons. So Calvin Bassey Mark II. I think that's a bit lazy, if I'm being honest. I'm not sure that he's the same kind of player. I think he's maybe a wee bit more technical than Bassey was. But time will tell him. As I said, I do like the look of him. And I think it's probably quite telling that apparently Milan wanted to keep him. They didn't want him to go, and I'd imagine if you're doing that you're doing it for a reason, aren't you? So yeah, like what I say, I think it's one for the future for.
Yeah. So you heard it here first, Rangers fans. Dave doesn't think he's a Calvin Bassey. He sees him more as a Maldini. Let's see how that one pans out. Doug, you missed our very, very generous Jeff Day / Gareth Bale comparison, whether he could play on that right-hand side before. Firstly, I'd just like to get your take on that before you shot off there. And then secondly, what your thoughts are on Nsiala.
I did catch you mentioning Bale. I think I spoke for about 2 minutes about it before realising that I wasn't actually live anymore. Yeah, my kind of main point was, going back to Jeff D, he's excited me in all the same ways that Barron is. He's energetic, he's up and down. I love how early he likes to try and get the ball in a lot of the time as well. So Kai touched on the cutbacks that he did. A lot of the time he's a bit similar to Ridvan, and he doesn't always push as far up. But unlike Ridvan, he gets the ball in really quickly, which I really like. I think we'll unsettle defences doing that, and hopefully, we'll see him getting a good few assists. In terms of playing right side, I don't see why he couldn't. Although, kind of touching back to what I said earlier, I would like to see us getting a position for him and letting him focus on becoming the best he can be in that position. Also, Dave said he's very young, and he came in, facing the quality level of Man United very early. So, maybe a little unfair on him, and that he got found out a bit there. But I didn't personally think that was hugely worrying, because he's young, because it's Man United and the level of player he's playing against. So, hopefully he develops and continues. And yeah, again, just really, really excited for the kind of the speed and the excitement that I think he might bring. In terms of Nsiala, I don't know a huge amount about him in terms of not seeing him play, because he didn't really have any first team football prior. But all the things I read about him was good. You mentioned Maldini. I think it was him that actually scouted him or was involved in the scouting of him, and kind of okayed him to be signed. So, that's a pretty good endorsement. And from what I gather, AC Milan offered him a 3-year contract to stay. So, if Milan are offering you a 3-year deal, you must have something going for you. So, I think it's an exciting prospect. And again, really young, only 20 years old, so plenty of space to grow. He looked a little bit like he does need a little bit of work when he played in the pre-season, but again, building in that he's coming into first team football, playing against high opposition. So he's always going to look a little bit shaky to start off with, but he's another player that even without the sort of seeing him play as much as some of the others, I still think I'm quite excited about the prospect of him. I think he could definitely be a Bassey in that he can come in, do well, and then hopefully I think be sold on for a reasonable fee.
Yeah, I'd agree with that one, bud. Right, we are going to be coming to the end in a second, but before we do, I just would like to offer the floor to Kai to talk us through two players, very briefly, if you could, Kai, that we've been linked with in the press in the past few days. The first one being Thiago Gouveia.
I'll probably just start by saying I'll keep Gouveia really quick because I don't think he's in our price range. I know the tweet that said we were interested also said Benfica were looking for, it was either 67 or 78 million euros. A really talented player. You look at the numbers there, 107 minutes per goal contribution. He's actually averaging something ridiculous like 14 minutes per goal contribution or something this season because he got a goal and an assist in 28 minutes. Really talented player that's just unfortunately in a Benfica team that has a lot of talent already. And I'm going to assume they'll put a massive sell-on clause in there because if he gets a run of games at a team, you look at those numbers there, gets a run of games in a team that will give him that time and make him one of the main men. He's easily a 20 million plus player. So as much as I'd love to get him in, I just don't think it's realistic.
Fair enough. Next player is Josip Brekalo.
Brekalo's a much more interesting one. So it's obviously got him listed as a left winger, can also play on the right, and he's played as a 10 as well a lot of his time at Torino. So you look at what he gives you essentially is a lot of experience in the Serie A, in the Bundesliga as well, lots of time with Wolfsburg, 30 plus caps for Croatia. He's still only 26. Like I say, he can play all the positions behind the striker. He's a good creator. You can see he's spent the end of the season with Hajduk in the Croatian top flight, which is probably a slightly higher standard than Scottish football outside of the Old Firm, I would probably say. So you can see creating almost 3 chances per 90, which is the numbers that James Tavernier gives us. And he's versatile, very good in the ball. Like I said, good chance creator that can also score goals, very technically gifted. We also love a Croatian. So this is one I would like to see. I don't know what the kind of Fiorentina are after, but I think this would be a loan, probably with a buyer, with an option or obligation to buy. But as one I would be excited about if we can push this through the door.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Kai. And I don't know about you, but it's just nice to be linked to some players that seem to have a decent caliber around them. What I'm going to do, lads, I'm going to quickly whiz around the team here and ask for the one player who stood out for you so far from a Rangers point of view, and then if you just say your goodbye. So, Doug, I'm gonna go over to you, matey.
In anticipation for what I think others might say, I'm going to say Jeff Day. As I say, quite excited. I like a good attacking player, and I think you'll do good things with us. And I'm quite excited to see how he develops. I think the big takeaway I'd kind of just like to say in summary is that I like the overall sort of what's the word I'm looking for? The overall kind of template of players that we've got brought in this season. There seems to be a strategy behind these signings. They're similar. They're young. They're from like interesting emerging areas. They've got a lot of talent that can be developed. We've not got those kind of older, typical championship-y style signings, and it doesn't look like we're interested in making many. And there's not been a huge amount of links there, so I'm really encouraged by that. I think we, in general, should be encouraged by that from Cotman. So I'll say Jeff Day, and thanks everyone for tuning in. There's been a lot of great comments tonight and a lot of good chat.
Thanks for coming on, Doug. Good to see you again. And Dave, same question to you.
Yeah, so I think obviously Jeff Day has stood out, as has Barron. I think the one that interests me, though, and maybe it's hopefully a bit different to what Kai's going to say after me, is Robin Proper. Whilst yes, we've talked about his ability to step out of defence, etc., but he seems very, very suited for Scottish football as well. He seems to quite like the kind of blood and guts defending side of it as well. So I think I'm sure others will go for more, potentially, do more obvious, visible things. But I think Proper could actually be a really astute signing for us. And as a defender, you've still got a good few years left on him as well. So yeah, for me, Robin Proper. Thanks for listening, everyone. Nice comments. See you soon.
Thank you, Dave. Great to have your input. And over to Mr. Rangers Journal himself.
Hamza Egerman. And I'm going to predict that Hamza Egerman's definitely going to hit double figures for goals this season, even if he only starts playing goals in November. I'm going to put that out there. From what I've seen, I'm so confident that he's going to be able to come in and hit the ground running. So Hamza Egerman for me is going to get double figures goals this season, not just league goals. Like that's maybe a bit unrealistic if he only starts playing in November. So over the course, I'm going to say Hamza Egerman hits double figures for goals this season. And like the guys have said, comments are really good tonight, and thank you so much for watching. And before you end, Ross, who is your player?
Oh, I'm going to go with Connor Barron. I think the guy's hit the floor running. Maybe the obvious one, and maybe you guys didn't want to say that, but I think the guy's been exceptional. Way exceeded what I thought we'd see from the guy already. And he just seems like he's a Rangers, whether he's a Rangers fan or not, but he seems like one of us on the pitch. He's doing everything that I would want to be doing if I was there, giving everything, leaving every drop of sweat on there, which is all you can ask for. So really encouraging stuff from him. Well, thanks to the panel for your great input this evening. Kai, thanks again for the slides. Thank you everyone for watching at home and listening in. Please do like, share, and subscribe if you haven't already. We've seen some exciting players come through the door. Let's hope for 3 or 4 more before the window slams shut. Thanks for watching the Rangers Journal.